Welcome to the Rewatch. Today we're going to be doing a spoiler-free review of Tenet, Christopher Nolan's new film that was meant to release on the 27th of November. No,
It was meant to
August.
release like 7 different times. Like, this movie has been delayed more than any other in the history of cinema, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And now
But
they've just opted to like release it wherever they can.
yeah, in your case,
It's here.
yesterday.
Yeah,
Yeah,
how good.
yesterday for us.
Yeah, so I went to see an advanced screening of Tenet. Nobody else in the world has seen this movie, from what I gather. I mean, obviously, reviewers sometimes they got in early, but
Yeah.
apart from that, it's not out anywhere else in the world right now. I saw it yesterday, so we're going to talk about it, but we're going to do a spoiler-free discussion because obviously you have not seen the movie, and you would obviously like to see the movie because this movie is going to save the box office, or rather, it's going to bring the box office back, from
Yep.
from the pandemic. So let's just get into it. And I reiterate, this is spoiler free. So if you do want to watch the movie, we're going to discuss very, brief
Yeah.
pros and
minuscule.
cons.
Yeah.
No details whatsoever. Just the basics. We're going to go through the music, the action, the acting, and a few pros and cons. Like, we're not going to go into the details just yet, but we will eventually once you have seen the movie.
Yeah.
So stay tuned on Spotify and the like for that podcast.
Radio. So I think the first question that everyone would like to sort of know or understand more is, what is a tenet?
Well, that is a very good question. Thank you so much for asking. A tenet is nothing too exciting, really. It's a word. Obviously, spoiler free. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but obviously, we can get from the trailers the fact that there's a spy agency, right? The main character is a spy, essentially, and he's tasked with, he's given this word, and that's the only sort of thing he has on this mission that he goes on to save the world, is the word Tenet, and it's going to open some good doors, and it's going to open some bad ones, but it's always going to open doors. So when he goes about, his quest, it's basically like, can I trust you? It's the spy code word,
Yeah.
to like, see whether fellow spies are in on it, So they say they work Tenet into their conversation somehow,
Okay.
usually saying like tenant. So they say like, oh, I like to keep my tenants happy or something. And they're like,
Yeah.
oh, I too have tenants or something like that,
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, they both know that they're spies and they can trust each other.
Okay.
So that's what a tenet is.
Another thing I wanted to ask about is one thing that Christopher Nolan always delivers on in his films is the his music choices. So I was just wondering what you thought about the composing and the music in this film.
Yeah, fantastic, to be honest. I mean, you expect it from Christopher Nolan. You look at movies like Interstellar, Inception, The Dark Knight. The music is such a major part of the film.
Yeah.
It's, it elevates everything. It really becomes part of the movie. And, the opening scene, I won't talk about it in too much detail, but it's an action scene, and the music is just fantastic, and the soundtrack, like the main theme, I guess you can call it,
Yeah.
for like when the action is going, and everybody, like, there's things all over the place. The music is incredible. It is so good. I cannot
Great.
stress it enough. Fantastic. It, go see this movie in the biggest cinema with the biggest speakers that you can, because it's a feast for the ears, I guess.
Nice.
It's some of the best music I've seen in an action movie
Heard.
ever. It's composed by Ludwig Göransson, who has worked on projects like The Mandalorian.
Ooh.
And obviously the music was fantastic in that.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, he's worked on many, many, many things. He's up there with Hans Zimmer in the best sort of composers
John
for
Williams.
action movies,
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So that's the music. It was fantastic.
Radio. So you talked about the action in the first sequence, in the opening scene. Do you want to touch more on action and how, what it delivered in this film, and was it what you expected?
Yeah, yep. So again, action was brilliant. This movie, it's very Christopher Nolan-esque in the sense that you really have to pay attention to what's going on. But the action scenes are almost refreshing because there's no fast dialogue and you don't have to listen to every word that they're saying. You
Okay.
can sort of just enjoy it for what it is.
Yeah.
And the cinematography and how the camera is, how the camera's worked around the action scenes is fantastic.
Mhm.
A lot of the times in action movies we get this sort of shaky cam
Yeah.
that you can never sort of tell what's going on, whereas in this you can see everything and it's fantastic. So yeah, so the action is great, and like obviously the cinematography, so like how the camera moves around
Yeah.
the fights and all of the the effects and everything like that is brilliant. And yeah, so the action's really refreshing because a lot of this movie, especially at the start, is very quick dialogue, and you really have to pay attention. And a lot of people will get lost along the way,
Mhm.
but you just have to stick with it. Like I did get lost a couple times, but they sort of feed it to you as you go along,
Yeah.
so you can sort of catch up. But the action scenes, you can sort of just relax and enjoy the spectacle that's in front of you.
Great.
Pretty awesome. It was pretty great.
The cinematography that you were talking about, obviously there is an award for cinematography at the Academy Awards. Is this a film that you would expect to maybe be nominated for the best cinematography?
Well, perhaps. I mean, it depends as to whether the Oscars actually go ahead this year. I think if they
True,
do,
yeah.
um, this movie's definitely got a shot.
Has
I don't know.
potential.
I don't think there's a category for best action movie, is there? There isn't.
No, I don't think so.
But no, there isn't. But if there was, this would take it for sure. This, I don't know. If the Academy Awards do go ahead this year, I think this movie is going to be up there for probably everything because this is by far the best movie I've seen this year.
Ooh,
And looking at sort of what's to come for the rest of the year, there's not much
not
else.
much, yeah.
Not many sort of big productions, no blockbusters, pardon, that are gonna reach this same sort of level.
Okay.
So I feel as though definitely for cinematography it's gonna get an honorable mention, I'm gonna call it. Yeah, but whether it takes it home or not will just be a question of whether the Academy Awards go ahead this year. If they do, I think this movie's got a chance because it's very beautiful to look at.
Yeah,
Every shot is at least you can just look at it and think like, wow, that's a nice shot.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, A+ for cinematography. For me, it's going to get an honorable mention at least, in my opinion.
So another thing that's really important to filmmaking is the actual acting that goes on in the film. Did you maybe want
Mm.
to touch more on that? And obviously between each actor.
Yeah. So basically, I think in terms of main characters, we have four. We have John David Washington, who's the main guy. We never find out what his name is,
Oh,
but
really?
he's the protagonist. That's what he's called.
Okay.
And obviously, protagonist used in sort of like video game terms as the person who's the hero or running the show.
Yeah.
It's focused on them. Um, we also have Robert Pattinson, aka I'm Vengeance. And we also have Elizabeth Debicki. I pronounced that wrong. I
Becky
apologize.
maybe.
Um, and we have Kenneth Branagh
Brunner.
as well, and he's sort of the bad guy.
Yep.
But everybody is brilliant in this movie. You sort of can't fault them. Let's go back to the top though. So John David Washington, the protagonist, he's obviously the main spy. Um, and obviously, yeah, he's great. I've seen him in movies such as The Black Klansman. He's great in that. He's great in this too. He sort of makes light jokes as he goes along. Like he's sort of got a bit of sense of humor.
Mm-hmm.
So sort of like how the Avengers make jokes and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's nowhere near the sheer volume of jokes that the Avengers make, and also, when you think about the Avengers, they sort of make jokes in serious situations, and they sort
Yeah.
of take away from the gravity of the situation going on.
Yep.
Whereas this movie is quite serious, so he's not making jokes, when his life's threatened and when there's lots of things going on.
Okay.
But like it's just in those little moments where he provides a bit of humor relief,
Yep.
which I think is quite refreshing because it's a very serious movie, and John Washington, sort of his character, makes these sort of subtle jokes as it goes along, which is good because it is a very serious movie.
Yeah.
So it's refreshing in that sense. Robert Pattinson, aka the Batman.
I'm Vengeance.
I am Vengeance. He was my personal favorite in this movie,
Okay.
but that's probably because he is Batman.
Will be Batman.
Yes, will be. And yeah, so I thought he was fantastic in this as well, and it obviously just makes me excited
Even more excited for the Batman. Yeah.
because I haven't seen Robert Pattinson in a movie before. Like, obviously he was in the Twilight, and he's been in a few sort of.
He was in Harry Potter as well.
Oh yeah, okay. So I've seen him in Harry Potter.
Yep.
But like, as to recently, he's sort of been involved in these indie projects.
Yeah, a lot of
sort of,
level film.
yeah,
Yeah.
racking up a few wins to get back into the acting game, really, and trying to restore his reputation.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, Twilight sort of brought him down a bit.
Yeah.
But anyway, he's back now, and he's here to stay. He was my favorite, and I'm looking forward to seeing him in the Batman.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on to Elizabeth, who plays Kat, who's the wife of the bad guy in this film. She's brilliant as well, and her story is more of a human element. This movie's very sci-fi. It's very complex, but her story is very, emotionally centered.
Yeah.
It's very human centered, and I thought that was great because it brings the movie back down a bit. Sort of tells a more simple story, but obviously the simpler story is intertwined with all this, crazy sci-fi stuff going on.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed her character's journey. And obviously her husband, who's played by Kenneth Branagh, he's obviously the bad guy, and he's very subtly insane, and he sort of his performance shows that. He's bad to the core, but he doesn't really express it for much of the movie. He's not a super out there guy. He's quite introverted.
Okay.
But you can tell that he's sort of subtly insane, but he never goes over the top.
Yeah.
It's not like a Jared Leto's Joker or anything like that.
Yeah.
So overall the acting's fantastic. Can't really fault it. In terms of like best actor performances though, no one's really given enough sort of emotional material to sort of really hit home in terms of like the acting and expressing like their acting talent.
Okay.
Like it is a sci-fi action movie at the end of the day, and while Elizabeth, Kat, the wife of the antagonist, she has quite an emotional story. Nobody's really given enough sort of time to really give a really good performance, but that's okay. It's not what this movie's about. This movie isn't a Joker where someone like Joaquin Phoenix can
go
unleash
all out
himself.
on his character.
Exactly. There's a story that needs to be told here, and they tell it very quickly.
I think another question that a lot of the viewers or people that might want to go see this film have is, how do bullets actually go backwards?
Yeah, so this is the thing that everybody would have seen in the trailers. It's sort of the only thing that's shown in the trailers in terms of this inversion technology. So they show David Washington's character, the protagonist, at a shooting range, and the bullets go from the rock into the gun, and he's like, what on earth is this? And in the movie it's explained so quickly, and at one stage they're just like, the person who's explaining it to the protagonist is like, don't try to understand it, and as an audience you just have to try not to understand it either. It works in its future technology. There's radiation involved. There's sort of like a time travel element involved as well. Time travel is a big thing in this movie, and it's one of the things that creates these, WTF moments
Yeah.
in the start,
Hmm.
and then by the end you're like, oh, like you
It
get it.
explains it all. Okay.
Yeah. So definitely, like towards the start of this movie's runtime, so many people are going to be thinking, what on earth is going on? Like, have I missed something?
Yeah.
And you haven't. You just need to stick with it through until the end.
Okay.
And wow, like when you get to the end of this movie, like I was blown away. I mean, you saw my Instagram post on the story.
Yeah.
Like, just I was taken aback. I didn't know.
You didn't
I
know
was
what to
speechless.
say. Yeah.
But yeah, with regards to how bullets go backwards, you sort of just have to go along with it. And I think they do explain it. But in terms of like, thinking about the physics, there is a bit of an explanation, but I think the movie sort of it doesn't try to explain it per se. It just uses it to tell the story.
Yeah.
And yeah, pretty awesome story. So yeah, just don't try to think about it too hard. Listen to the dialogue, and you'll get the best explanation that you possibly could.
Okay. Did you just want to go over maybe a few short points on both your pros and cons in the movie?
Yeah. Okay. So pros definitely we touched on before. So the music, the acting, the action, the cinematography, and obviously the story. I think the story is quite well done as well. This is really Christopher Nolan doing what he wants
Yeah.
entirely. This is a man who has a vision, and a studio has given him some money and said, "Go do it
Yeah.
and do whatever you want." And we're given a masterpiece because of it. Because this is a creative man, one of the best directors of our time, I'm going to say,
Yeah.
who's just been taken off the leash, and he's gone wild.
He has no boundaries essentially.
Exactly,
Yeah,
no
he can do
boundaries
what he
whatsoever.
wants, yeah.
Exactly, and you can tell, and the result is a fantastic story. Some of the set pieces, so like some of the action set pieces, are so well done, and they're so extravagant that you think they're the final climax of the movie. So obviously, like in all these action superhero movies, we have a big battle at the end,
Yeah.
and we're like, okay, this is the ending. Stuff's going to go down here. And there's so many instances in this movie where you're like, wow, this is massive. This is the end, and then it's not. And usually, when something like that happens, you're like, oh, come on, like that should have been the ending there. Whereas this movie goes so fast that you're not left disappointed or bored that it hasn't actually finished.
Yeah.
It doesn't sort of overstay its welcome. It is a long movie. It's 2.5 hours, but it goes so fast that
You don't notice.
yeah, and you get disappointed that. Well, I mean, you don't get disappointed. Rather, the fact that the action sequence was not the final one, because there's more to come.
Yeah.
And the story develops.
Yeah.
So yeah, but in terms of as the story goes, from halfway, I think I was fully invested. It's a long way to get there, though. You really have to listen to everything that's going on, because there are some mind-bending things in this movie.
Yeah.
As there are in lots of Christopher Nolan films. So you really have to concentrate, listen to the action, listen to the dialogue.
Okay.
So yeah, but once you sort of know what's going on, and you know who the bad guy is, and you know what the mission, and you know what the threat is, you're fully invested, and then you're just along for the ride.
Okay.
The action sequences are incredible, and the final sequence, so the final sequence, when you actually know it's the final battle, essentially, it's just mind-blowing. The time travel element, it's fantastic. The whole movie is mind-blowing, to be honest. So just to go to the cons, I mentioned a bit just then. So there's obviously lots of WTF moments. There's lots of moments where you're like, how on earth, like what is going on?
Yeah.
But you just need to stick with it. There is lots of fast dialogue, and sometimes it's hard to keep up. And I found that it was sometimes actually hard to hear what the actors were actually saying.
Okay.
I was searching for the subtitles button in the cinema. I was like, oh, we need subtitles for this, because I can't. Sometimes you just can't hear them.
You can't take it
Sometimes,
all in, yeah.
yeah, sometimes they mumble, and sometimes the dialogue is so fast that, like, if you miss a line, you miss the whole, the whole conversation.
Mm.
Yeah, so yeah, you really have to concentrate, unfortunately, and some people aren't going to like that. But in terms of like the people that, will invest enough energy and brain power, are really going to, see, like, they're going to experience the reward for that
Yeah.
towards the end. But there's lots of hard cuts as well. So throughout the entire movie, you can tell that this has been compressed, like, maximum, like to the
Greatly.
maximum
Yeah.
amount. Like, everything that was not necessary has been cut.
Yeah.
And there are massive cuts all over the place. So sometimes those can be slightly jarring, but in terms of, getting the story going, they serve a purpose because they cut out the filler and they just get to it.
Okay.
But yeah, you really have to concentrate, and that's the only negative that I can really see coming out of this movie that's gonna deter people, is the fact that you really have to concentrate. And some people just want to, lie there like a baby and just, like,
Yeah.
take it all in.
Yeah. I know.
And
I am, for one, maybe one of those people who want to
Yeah.
sit back in a theater and kind of just be immersed in the film. So paying attention will be a bit different, but I'm not going to be a stranger to it. So
Yeah, but yeah, so overall, I mean, if I was to give this a ranking at this stage, I'm gonna go and rewatch it as soon as I can. But yeah, it's an A tier for me, and it'd be a crime to say anything else.
Okay.
But I definitely missed things, like, I acknowledge that. I definitely missed a few dialogue lines, and due to the time travel element, I feel as though that I'll actually have more fun rewatching the movie than I did watching the first time, because I know more about the universe.
What's going on, and
Yeah, and there's certain scenes at the start that I'm going to be able to watch, and because I have that previous knowledge, it's going to make it so much better.
Mhm.
So yeah, so that sort of wraps it up.
Okay.
Fantastic movie. Everyone should go see it.
Yeah, I know you had some critic reviews that you wanted to touch on.
Yeah, so a few people have obviously reviewed this movie and seen it at advanced screening as well, and I just want to highlight two reviews, one overwhelmingly positive and one overwhelmingly negative. So the Telegraph, from Robbie Collin, gave it a 100 out of 100, or 10 out of 10. He said, the depth, subtlety and wit of Patterson and Debicki's performances only becomes fully apparent once you know where Tenet is going, or perhaps that should be where it's been. Still confused? Don't be, or rather do be, and savour it. This is a film that will cause many to throw up their hands in bamboozlement, and many more, I hope, to clasp theirs in awe and delight. And I think that sums up the movie perfectly, in the sense that once you know where Tenet is going, you're fully on board. It's the fact that getting there is going to deter a lot of people. It's going to lose a lot of people along the way.
Okay.
To reference a overwhelmingly negative review, we've got Catherine Short from The Guardian, who gave it a 2 out of 5-star rating. She says, there's something grating about a film which insists on detailing its pseudoscience while also conceding you probably won't have followed a thing. We're clobbered with plot, then comforted with tea towel homilies about how what's happened has happened. Now, I think Catherine's completely missed the point here, and I think she's sort of one of those people that, has been deterred from the fact that you have to pay attention in this movie. So she says that lots of confusing things happen, but then we're fed as to how they happen later on. And I can sort of see where she's coming from, but she's sort of missed the point, and she's definitely going to represent these certain people that are going to get confused and then are just going to give up. But look, that's fine. This movie's not for everyone. This isn't a movie that everyone's going to watch. It's not an Avengers. It's not a sit back, relax, and just have a plot spoon fed to you. So I think Catherine sort of missed a point on there, but 2 out of 5 stars. I think this movie deserves a lot better than that on other merits. So even just like the action
Yeah,
and the
and the
music and everything.
cinematography you talked about. Yeah.
Yeah, so she's obviously just completely been left behind by the plot, and reviewed it negatively because of that. And I think that's a crime.
Yeah, that was our spoiler-free sort of talk on Christopher Nolan's Tenet that has just been released or is to be released. If you would also like to watch more about us talking about Tenet, we are going to be releasing a podcast on it very shortly once I have watched it. And you can also view that on Spotify, Anchor, Google Playlist, Apple Podcasts, and here on YouTube, which is where this video will be. Um, and that is all from us now, and we will catch you later.
Bye bye.